Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Happily Home Cooking. Today in the kitchen we are craving some Mexican food, so we are going to whip up an easy batch of chili Colorado. We'll be using dried chili peppers to make a deliciously smooth and creamy chili Colorado sauce. And for our meat, we're going to be using some BBQ brisket. My husband did a slow barbecue on this brisket the other day for about 10 hours. It came out absolutely delicious, but it is huge, so chili Colorado is one of my favorite things to do with the cooked meat. We also use some of it to make these amazing cheesesteak sandwiches. If you want the recipe for that, let me know down in the comments, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel and turn on those notifications so you will know when we do come out with that recipe. But back to today, we are going to be making our chili Colorado and serving it with some of our Instant Pot pinto beans and Mexican rice. If you'd like the recipe for either of those, I will put it down in the comments. So come hang out with me for a bit in the kitchen and I'll show you how we make our easy yet delicious chili Colorado. So first we will start with our dried chilies, which we will use to make our sauce that will simmer our beef in. I'm using a combination of Guajillo and Ancho Chili peppers. You can find these in bags dried at your grocery store. And we're going to use about 4 of each. Now these come in lots of different sizes. You can see here that some are quite a bit larger than others. So about 4 medium size. So that might mean if you have big ones, you might just want 3, or if you have some smaller ones, you might want to make it 5. It doesn't have to be exact. About 4 of each kind. So we'll grab our dried chilies, and I'm just going to cut off the stem and just try to shake out any loose seeds that might be inside. I do find that the Guajillo chilies, which are the smoother ones, tend to have more seeds than the Ancho chilies, which are the wrinkly, bumpy looking ones. So we'll just turn them upside down, give them a quick little shake. We're not going to stress about it. We will be straining our sauce later. So now we'll take our dried chilies and we're going to drop them into a dry pan, no oil or anything. We're just going to give these a light toast to warm them up to help bring out some of their great flavor. I have this burner on a medium heat. We definitely don't want to burn these and give them a scorched flavor. So I'm just going to keep an eye on them and just keep turning them. So again, we are just kind of warming them through and lightly toasting them. This only takes a minute or 2, and you will notice they have a much softer texture than they did right out of the bag once they are warmed. After that, we're going to transfer our warmed chilies into a saucepan, cover them in water, and we will bring this up to a boil. Once it's come to a boil, we are just going to give them a gentle press down, make sure they are all mostly submerged. We will pop on a lid and then turn off your heat and let these just steep in the hot water for about 20 to 30 minutes. Meanwhile, we will grab an onion to use in our sauce. I'm going to use about half of this large yellow onion. Peel the skin off and just give it a very rough slice or chop. This does not have to be small. And we are going to throw these onions into that same pan that we toasted our chilies in. Again, the pan is dry, and we are just going to give these a quick little char. So I do like to turn up the heat a bit to a medium-high for this part. And we're just going to give these onions some nice color. They do not need to be cooked all the way down. Why do we do this? Color is flavor, essentially, in cooking. Now, that being said, I have skipped this whole part of toasting the dried chilies and browning the onions. If you are in a hurry, you can skip this and just go to the next step. It will come out fine, but if you have just a couple extra minutes, this does add just a little extra hint of flavor. So you can see we've got some nice brown color onto our onions. So now at this point, we are going to transfer them into a blender. And then we'll just set this blender aside and wait for our chilies to finish reconstituting. After about a half hour, your chilies should be all rehydrated. We are going to drain out the water. You can see and feel how soft and pliable these once dried chilies now are. And we are going to add these chilies into our blender with our charred onions. And now off to the blender to finish our sauce. We'll add half a tablespoon of garlic. I like to buy my garlic already minced, but if you're using whole cloves, that would be about 3 cloves or so. And we'll also add in 2 cups of water. Pop on the lid and we will puree this in our blender for about 2 minutes. It will not be completely smooth, but we want the pieces as small as possible for when we strain our sauce. That's looking good, and now we strain it. I'm using a fine mesh strainer, which I've placed over a large measuring cup, or you could easily just use a deep bowl. I'll pour in about half of my chili puree to start with. And then with either a spatula or a spoon is just fine. We are just going to stir this around, agitating it to help strain our sauce through the mesh strainer. Now, I'm not going to lie, this part is a bit tedious. It does take a bit of time. However, it is well worth that time. Although our chilies have been reconstituted, their skins are very papery and do not give a pleasant texture to your sauce. So we really want to take the time to strain those out, along with any seeds that might have been in those peppers as well. Once enough of your sauce has strained through and you have some room in your strainer again, we can add in the rest of our sauce and continue pushing it through. As you go and more of that liquid strains through, you'll notice what's left in your mesh strainer is thicker. Really try to scrape along the bottom of your strainer so that will help let things move through. Also, don't be afraid to use your spoon or your spatula to kind of press it into the mesh strainer to help it along. You can see all that delicious, smooth sauce that we're making. This will be well worth the effort. When you're done, you will be left with basically a very dry looking mixture of just the seeds and those papery skins. I'm left with about 1/3 cup or so in my strainer, and we are going to just dump that out. Before you do though, don't forget to scrape all that goodness off the bottom of your strainer that has been pushed through but just didn't drip off yet. That stuff is like gold. And now our beautiful, smooth, intense chili sauce is ready to be finished up in a pot with our beef. So for our beef, I am using this brisket today. Again, my husband barbecued this the other day and I just cut off a chunk for this recipe and popped it in the fridge. You do not have to use brisket though. I have made this with leftover tri-tip. You can really use any kind of beef that you like. Whatever you use, you're just going to cut it up into whatever size chunks you like. I like to have some pretty good sized chunks for our chili Colorado. I'd say they're about 1-inch chunks or so, and we are using about 1.5 to 2 pounds of meat. Now back on the stove, grab whatever kind of pan you want to use. I am using this braising pan. You could just use a regular pot though, it really doesn't matter. Something that is deep enough to hold your meat and sauce and has a lid. We're going to pop our meat into our pan, pour in our chili sauce, and then just a few last ingredients we will add. We will add 2 teaspoons of beef bouillon, or I like to use this better than bouillon, beef base. I get this in a nice big jar from Costco, and it is more of a liquidy paste than a dry powder. We are also adding some maseca. I love using maseca. It adds a really nice subtle sweetness and is a gentle thickener as well. I'm going to do 2 heaping tablespoons. If you want to measure it out, it's really more of a 1/4 cup. We'll sprinkle that in there. Give it a stir to incorporate all of that dried maseca into our sauce and our beef. And then the last thing we will add is 1 additional cup of water. Again, just a quick little stir to incorporate it all together. And now all that's left to do is let it simmer and cook. I will pop on the lid, turn the heat down to low, and walk away and let it simmer. There is really no set time for this. The longer you let it go, the more tender your meat will become. I let this go for anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, just depending on what we're doing that day, depending on what kind of meat we're using and how tender it was to begin with. And I love things like this where you can prep it all earlier and then just have it simmering and it'll be hot and ready to go when you're ready to serve dinner. No last minute rushing around. Always give it a taste, see if you'd like to adjust your seasonings at all. You may want to add a little extra salt or pepper depending on how well seasoned your meat was that you put in there to begin with, and you are ready to go. Any meat you use will come out so incredibly tender in this recipe, and the sauce is absolutely delicious. There are many different ways that you can serve this chili Colorado. Today, I just served it with our Instant Pot pinto beans and our homemade Mexican rice, which again, those links are in the description. This also goes great in burritos and anything else you can think of, really. If you try this recipe out, I would love to hear how you liked it and how you served it. Please come back and leave me a comment. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click that bell to turn on notifications so you know when we share our next family favorite recipe. Have an amazing day and happy home cooking!